So we're making the empirical judgment that over time the era of women's emancipation has come, as everything's fine for women now, they can write and win prizes and be shortlisted. Does it have are you making a social commentary on the evolution of British society?
I think the result is that there is a social commentary. That wasn't one of the considerations. And when we were actually during the judging process, it wasn't one of the considerations. But what happened when we came up with our final list is that we looked at the names and thought, okay, well, this is really interesting. Everything isn't fine for women. Everything isn't fine growing up or living and working as an ethnic minority in England. But what has happened is that people who came there at one point as immigrants with opportunities that were maybe very constrained are now the parents of children who have worked quite hard to make sure that those constraints are no longer there. And they're finding forms of expression that weren't necessarily available to a previous generation. And not only that, they're excelling at those chosen forms of expression. And luckily for us, literature is one of those.
Going off at a tangent, we have with you here the deputy editor of a premier international magazine. Let's focus on the word editor. What do you look for if I was a writer and say, so that's the woman who could commission my work? What is, at this stage, an index of finesse, an index of achievement?
I think, I have a very simple rule that if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm still reading, there's something there. It happens.
It grips you.
It grips me.
Right.
I'm looking for craft. I'm looking for somebody who's really thought carefully about the words that they're using. I'm also looking for originality. I don't want to be bored.
But the reason I ask that is to put this idea that there is a sort of prescribed product that comes from Africa.
Oh.
And that product might involve the fact that I was a child soldier and sort of ate people's liver for breakfast. This plays very well in those alien circumstances. But the story versus the craft, what is the interrelationship as you see it?
So the story, and it definitely isn't. Now, I think that, there's been a lot of conversation, I think, the last couple of years about this child soldier narrative. But the very fact is that we are a continent that does have child soldiers. And if a writer wants to write about that and can make it feel fresh and new and tell me something I didn't know and compel me with the characters, then it's a good book. If it's just the same story I've read 100 times before and I could have maybe read better in a newspaper, then that's not going to be something that I want to publish.
So the African writer will engage in a process of self-revelation. It's about me sitting here and telling you about all the gunge in my family life, but which I would exclude in my own narrative if I was sitting with my aunties and cousins and uncles.
It shouldn't be two different things. And I certainly, as an editor, I'm not looking for... In fact, I reject stories that are written with a view to what the foreign reader is going to think. So, for example, if somebody's writing and they say, in the Kenyan city of Mombasa, which you will find on the coast, don't want to know that. But if somebody says, in Mombasa, and they're local words, and there's an accent to the word, that is fresh and new. I haven't read that before. That is the experience that we know now actually has commercial potential. All of that gatekeeping that has happened, the second guesses what the readers actually want, has proved to be wrong. I mean, in this publishing season alone, we have internationally published, potentially best-selling works by 6 African writers.
Right, I'm going to take you on that word, gatekeepers.
Yes.
Would you name the gatekeepers in the process?
I'm one of them. I'm one of the people who sits at a desk, reads a submission and decides whether or not I'm going to offer this writer some money to publish their book. And my colleagues who are working in publishing are those gatekeepers.
Are you alone? If as a consequence of this interview, people Google you and inundate you, because you know that everybody presumes to have talent. The sifting process, I still haven't seen in my mind's eye how you whittle down the potential list of the canon.
On one level, it's very easy, but what you have to remember is that I'm a reader by profession. This is what I do, and so it starts off being the child with the torch under the bed, reading after lights out, and then it carries on to being a profession. I read professionally. That means that Unfortunately, I can usually tell within the first 2 paragraphs whether something is going to be good or not. And that's got to do with use of language. The words used, is it, a dark and stormy night, and therefore I know that actually I can probably put it in the bin. That kind of thing. And so there is a sifting process, but it's about intelligent reading that's engaged. And actually, my job is not necessarily to bin bad manuscripts, it's to find the gem in that thing. It's not about rejection. It's about that constant quest for the book that I'm going to publish, and that's going to be a massive success.
Do you have any words of, well, not wisdom exactly, but a view on this whole idea of the manipulation of the English language amidst the 57 odd countries that we have? Will you be, if I came up with something called Pidgin Kenyan, would that appeal to you, or do you want the full stops and the thought word to which I might have thought, the Queen's English? What is the appeal?
I want a very high level of craft. I want a writer who has thought about her use of language and is careful with it. And I definitely want English that's inflected with whatever inflections that particular story needs, because then it's exciting. The English language changes and mutates all of the time. We have an Indian English that's given to us by Salman Rushdie and Rohinton Mistry and Wikram Seth that is now part of ordinary reading life all over the United States and in the United Kingdom. And I think the very same can happen for African writing. In this year alone, we have examples of Novalet Bulawayo from Zimbabwe and Taye Selassie from Ghana and Nigeria. And they're not writing Queen's English, they're writing in English that's very much informed by their ancestral roots and sometimes by where they themselves grew up. And that's what makes it magical, and that's what makes it appealing, because it's not a book then that our readers have read before. There
are those who say that the word book is going to be a non-existent word because the electronics, IT, e-books are the thing of the future. For greater gain, both for the writer, because they will have control. Without people like you coming in, they'll just put it up there and everybody else can read it by lamplight until 2 o'clock in the morning. Do you think that in essence the book will be dead soon?
The death of the book has been long predicted, and I'm a huge fan of technological innovation. I love ebooks. I read on my Kindle, and I read online magazines, and so I'm not a Luddite by any terms. The book is not going to die, because the thing about people who actually spend money on books and spend time on books is that there's a love of the object. You open a book and you feel the pages and you want it signed and you want to put it on your shelf. So we use books for, in many different ways. They're part of the furniture in a bookish household. And also at the same time, you want to have gatekeepers, because a lot of people are writing books that actually aren't much good. You want somebody who does the hard job of sifting. So when you pay your however many shillings a book costs in a bookshop here, you want to know that not only have I spent the time choosing the best from that crop, but also working with that writer to make sure that is the best that it can be.
Do I detect therein an innate criticism of the Facebook paster, the blogger, the whole idea of the journalist was going to tell you in this way because they don't have the credentials so to do? You would say that you don't read bloggers.
I do.
Because nobody calibrates their output. They just set up a blog and start writing away.
Absolutely. I love Twitter and Facebook. I would not want it to be used to teach my child in school. I would not want it to be used as a primary source of information, because there has been no rigor in its production. And so when I scroll through Facebook, I'm doing it for entertainment. I'm certainly not doing it for information. I'll go to a news channel where I know that news editors have checked the facts, and they take care in their presentation, and it's curated in a way that makes it so I can get half an hour and know what's going on around the world. And I think the same goes for literature, that there is, the online media gives us easy access to a whole range of voices, but if you want a quality product, then the book is there, and it's, and I think it always will be there.
Do you have you've come to Kenya more than once. And if I said, okay, you are the outsider looking in, you're with Kwani, would you be so bold in a platform such as this as to comment on the state of our literature as you see it? Quite aside from the preoccupations of Granta.
Absolutely. I don't see why I shouldn't be able to, just as one of my colleagues could come to London and comment on that, because I think there is a common purpose and common delight that readers all over the world share that's not bound necessarily by sort of regional or national issues. I think that, a Kenyan reader can read Roberto Bolaño and derive as much pleasure as I do with my very different circumstances. And I think I can especially comment about Kenya because I think that it's somewhere I look to and say, this is where there's really exciting stuff happening. This is where writers are being encouraged and nurtured. And I want to take a look because I want to see who I can find here.
Right, so the last question, drawing in from that, 2-day workshop. I've been listening to writers that you've come with. We're a great crucible of creativity. We should be pleased. What's the takeaway from your workshop this time?
I've been really excited in the 2 days I've spent working with the 20 writers that we had to find that there are people who are writing at many different levels, from somebody who is really immersed in researching the life of Shabeens or brothels to somebody who wants to write an historical novel with a detective twist to it. And that range speaks of a very vibrant writing culture. There's a confidence to the young writers I've been working with, and also very much immersion in their own society and their own concerns, and a confidence that actually the rest of the world would probably be quite interested in what we have to say about ourselves. And for me, that's a thrill.
ELLAH ALLFREY, Deputy Editor, Granta Magazine. Thank you so very much.
John, thank you very much. A pleasure.